Hey everyone, this is Michael Gibbons with you from Trend Micro. So today what we're going to be talking about is Cloud One Workload Security's integration with AWS Systems Manager. We'll start off with a little bit of background to understand why we want to have some sort of integration here. Actually, I'm getting a lot of notifications going on in the background here, so I'm going to put my so I can quiet the air a little bit. So before we really get into the demo, get into the conversation around Cloud One and get into Cloud One Workload Security, we'll kind of set the scene by talking about managing a fleet of servers in the cloud. Now, managing a large fleet of servers in the cloud can be a bit of a hassle, right? If we have a high number of instances that we're using, perhaps I'll focus mainly on AWS here. Deploying applications, update packages, and in this case, agent-based security tools, that can be a pretty big task. Nobody wants to go in and SSH or RDP into a bunch of different resources, drop it in there, wait for it to upload, and then walk away. So what we can do here is allow organizations to integrate their infrastructure with a management service like AWS Systems Manager. And then this will allow them to easily automate big deployment and update jobs that could even take days otherwise, right? A long deployment process, having to go into each machine and work on these. So with Workload Security's integration with Systems Manager, we can deploy security to a server fleet of any size and be operational with just a few clicks. So I guess on a personal note, as a solutions architect and sales engineer with Trend Micro, a lot of my conversations that are about Cloud One Workload Security focus on this deployment piece, because people come to us and say, hey, we want to extend security to our servers. We got a lot of them. So what's an easy way to put this out here? And figuring out how to get there tends to be a head scratcher for a lot of the people we talk to. So that's where I'm going to focus here. Before kind of getting into the details around Systems Manager and even around Workload Security, I'll kind of give a brief overview of the Cloud One platform that Workload Security sits on. Then I'll walk you through Workload Security and what it features, what it has. And then lastly, we'll cover how exactly we can easily deploy Workload Security using AWS Systems Manager there. So I guess if you guys have any questions as the conversation is going on, please feel free to kick them out there. I might task Yvonne to kind of maybe read those in the end of the discussion there, but I just want you all to know that, questions are welcome. We can make it conversational and, keep it interactive. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kind of get into what is Cloud One. Get this going. Awesome. Now, I just want to verify, Yvonne, can you help me out here and help me understand whether or not I'm looking at my Cloud One dashboard here? Because
yes,
I got it. Okay, cool.
Yep.
And not my my notes.
No, yeah, just your dashboard.
All right. I'm too used to Teams now. We did a big migration from Zoom to Teams, and I forgot how to use Zoom basically. Anyway, so we'll talk about what is Cloud One. So Cloud One is a consolidation of what were once cloud point products or point solutions, point security solutions for different areas of cloud security, that we've put them all together into one dashboard where we can log in and access workload security, application security, so many different vectors of cloud security, all from one place. So if I'm a security team, if I'm a cloud architect that is focusing on security, even if I'm a developer, all of those, different titles can go and administer their blend or their flavor of security from one place here. This was pushed out in 2019, and as things kind of went live, we acquired and updated or onboarded new services. And I'll just do a brief overview of what each service is. So the workload security piece here, this is what the focus of today's conversation is. This focuses mainly on that server host security. So if we have servers sitting on-prem in a data center, if we have hybrid setup, or if we only solely have a server sitting on On a cloud data center, whether it's AWS or Azure, we can extend security out to those machines from here. Now, application security is more focused on those services and those servers or web applications running on machines that we have lost access to the host, right? So when we think about AWS's or even Azure's serverless technology, utilizing Lambda functions, we don't have access to the server host. So we can't go in and say, hey, AWS, can you put a security agent on that host that you're running my Lambda functions on? It's not going to happen. So we need to be able to secure that in runtime, but also by doing so with a security layer, perhaps attached to the Lambda function, or if it's a managed application service, maybe like Kubernetes, we will actually embed security into the code that is running on that cluster. And this helps us deploy in real time when we don't have access to the host. Network security, very straightforward and simple. This is where we can, oh, I'm sorry here. Just a notification. Hope that doesn't mean I got kicked. Anyways, network security, very simple and straightforward idea. This is where we're virtualizing our tipping point technology. And if you're familiar with Trend Micro, you may or may not have heard of tipping point. That is our hardware, inline IDS, IPS, and firewall solution. Comes in a hardware box, and we put it into our actual network. Now, when virtualized networks come into play, it's a little bit different. What we do is we take that technology running on the tipping point box, virtualize it, set it up on an instance in the cloud, depending on which cloud it is, right? We can put it on EC2 instance, or we can put it on Azure VM, and that'll serve as our frontline inline IDS, IPS, and firewall for our virtual private cloud. Now, on the file storage security side of things, this is a huge topic of discussion, but I'll try and keep it brief. This is deploying security to Azure blobs or AWS S3 buckets. This gives us the ability to check and see that any files, any objects that enter our cloud storage, whether it's on the Azure side or the AWS side, we want to see if that is malicious. Does it have malware in it? Is there malicious content in it? If so, what do we do about that? Well, we can scan that file as it lands in the bucket or becomes a blob. Make sure that it's clean or malicious. If it is malicious, we will automatically apply tags to it, and we can kick it out of the bucket that it landed in, move it over to a quarantine bucket, and allow you to investigate based off of that. Container security, this is everything containers pre-runtime. So when we are talking about, excuse me, sorry, I'm getting notifications left and right. When we are talking about, scanning Docker images and making sure that everything meets either our compliance or our internal security measures for containers in CI/CD, we can scan in CI/CD, check and see whether or not everything meets our standard. If it doesn't, and it's going through a deployment pipeline and getting ready to build and deploy, we can actually block that container build based off of the policy that you put in place and say, hey, if it doesn't meet our policy, we won't let it go live. And then lastly, conformity, which is the ability to kind of click zoom out on our cloud environment, whether it's AWS, Azure, or GCP, and look and see where that environment stands up against best practices. Best practices in the AWS and Azure side means the well-architected framework, right? So those 5 pillars of security, cost optimization, operational excellence, and so on. We'll get an overall score up against those pillars, but we also have visibility of where we stand up against compliance frameworks as well, like PCI DSS, GDPR, HIPAA, ISO 27001, and so on. So that was a lot of talking about the whole Cloud One platform here. And you can go really, really deep into each service, but today's conversation is more specific to workload security. So let me dive into workload security here. And like I said, guys, if you have any questions surrounding any of the services that I covered, feel free to drop that in the chat and we will address them towards the end of the conversation today. So I'm coming into the workload security dashboard from the Cloud One entry page here. And what's cool about workload security is regardless of where my servers are, like I said earlier, I can deploy them or deploy security to them. So for instance, I have a whole list of computers here, and these were all actually added via the AWS Cloud Connector, we can connect multiple different environments, whether it's just reaching out to it via IP, whether it is in a vCenter account, a vCloud account, AWS, Azure, GCP as well. They all have their own specific cloud connectors, and it's a quick and easy way to gain visibility of that server infrastructure sitting in the cloud, right? And then allows us, to see what's being managed and what's not, right? The thing with large cloud infrastructure deployments is that, when time comes around to deploy security, I need to see who's got what and where. So I can see that with this managed piece here. Before getting into this deployment process, though, we'll talk a little bit about what else is in workload security, talk about why it's so awesome. So in workload security, the way things work is we are applying a security policy to a machine that is enforced by a security agent. So think of this as the manager. This whole dashboard we're looking at here is the manager. We have a policy that is held in place and put together in the management console. And then we will deploy an agent to that machine to make sure that that policy is being held in place. The policies are made up of different modules. I'll select this module here, this policy here, and we'll walk through each module. Anti-malware, very simple when we're thinking about deploying, AV to a machine. Where we kind of go above the bar with our anti-malware module on workload security is this predictive machine learning and behavior monitoring. So without a doubt, servers these days are very, very, very critical, critically vulnerable to ransomware. There is a huge, huge payout. We're seeing that in real time these days as organizations, underground organizations are working to, seize people's documents, seize people's infrastructure in exchange for ransom. So with things like predictive machine learning and behavior monitoring, if anything makes its way onto the machine and it looks like a malware and it quacks like a malware, and it just so happens to start taking actions like a malware, we will identify that and be able to take action based off of what you decide on your policy. Obviously, I would recommend setting up quarantine, but some people have their own actions where you can say, hey, we just want to delete it. We'll get an alert for it anyways, just get it off the machine, and we can go look at the logs and see what happens. Behavior monitoring has this piece here, which is active action. In the event that a ransomware like malware makes its way onto the machine and begins to encrypt files, things like active action will actually come and back up and restore ransomware encrypted files, right? So if we want to make sure that this server has the best protection it possibly can or can get, we want to take action when action is being taken on the machine, right, in order to make sure that is not successful. Web reputation is the ability to make sure that there are no files or executables on this machine that are reaching out to malicious IPs off in the web, right? If we have a command and control, if we have a file that's been sitting dormant on a computer for a long time and it decides, hey, 3 months time is up, it's time for me to reach out to my command and control server and give my malicious actor some access to this. If that is a known command and control IP, that will be detected by web reputation, and we can have that blocking all of the web activity. Application control is the ability to basically make sure that whatever you have on the machine, right, we're running a baseline for it. So if there's any new unrecognized software that is being turned on and put on the machine, we will block that if it is explicitly blocked, unless you have, you can let things upload and make their way onto the machine and eventually go in and block those manually as well. But the ability to block automatically is great. Integrity monitoring, this is that thin piece, right? We want to look at the machine and make sure that the critical files in the machine are, staying integral. There's nothing, no changes being made to these files, to these directories, and we will monitor for that and give you real-time visibility of what's taking place if things are changing. Log inspection, very simple. right? Nobody wants to go look at security logs or go back and look at the system logs in general in order to find those that are specific to security, right? When we need to do some sort of IR, incident response, maybe do some forensics, it's better to have anything relevant to security immediately given to us. And with log inspection, we are doing that. Firewall, very simple, straightforward. We are just putting a host-based firewall on the machine. So whereas the inline IDS IPS firewall on the network in and of itself is covering that, I guess, north-south traffic, this is going to help us cover that east-west. And then intrusion prevention, the last piece here, this is a very, very strong piece of workload security. And this is kind of what gives us a leg up across the whole competition today, is basically applying a virtual patch to the machine. So in here is a massive list of vulnerability rules that we have identified either ourselves or either through community intelligence. I'm going to tell you right here, right now, that this majority of this stuff has been found by us. If y'all have ever heard of the 0-Day Initiative, the ZDI is a bug bounty program brought to you by Trend. And through this, we find, and I think, I'm not going to give any faulty numbers here, but I will say a majority of CVEs that were disclosed for vulnerabilities in 2020 were actually brought to attention by the ZDI, by Trend Micro. So we are constantly on the hunt for vulnerabilities. If we do find one and we can incorporate it into our tool, we will create a network level rule that will block any sort of activity built around the exploit of this vulnerability, kind of allowing you to, have a virtual patch in place. I don't want to say that this covers a patching strategy. You should definitely have a patching itinerary in place. But when time comes around, or if time ever comes around where the vulnerability is out there, people know about it and we know about it, but the patch hasn't gone live yet by that provider, we will cover that, block that exploit activity or exploit traffic with this piece here, kind of like virtual patching. So we can go really, really deep into workload security, and I can talk even more about it. But since we are coming up kind of at the final 10 minutes of our conversation today, I'll talk a little bit about deployment, workload security, and also how the systems manager distributor integration can help us achieve that. So if I have a massive fleet of servers in the cloud, right, I have to, and I want to get workload security on here, I have to make sure that every machine has that agent sitting on there and enforcing that policy for me. The typical way of going about it, let's say if we have a golden image or an AMI that we spin all of our servers up with, we can actually go grab a deployment script, depending on our select our operating system and select the policy that we're looking for. And then I actually have a full script for the deployment of this agent. So when time comes around for me to go back and launch an instance here, I can go into the instance details, user data, drop a deployment script, and upon creation of this instance, we will have this machine connected to workload security with the selected policy being enforced. Now, if we have a huge deployment that's already up and running, we have a massive fleet that's up and running, there needs to be a way to push this out to all of our machines. And so the way to do that is by integrating with AWS Systems Manager distributor. So what I'll do is kind of pivot over to Systems Manager here. And in doing so, I'll give a brief overview of what exactly this tool is. Now, Systems Manager was formerly known as SSM. It's an AWS service that we can use to kind of view and control our infrastructure on AWS. So if I have a massive fleet of EC2 instances and I need to see how everything looks from an insight perspective, from a monitoring perspective, I kind of have a single pane of glass with the Systems Manager piece. If I want to deploy packages, new applications, or in this instance, a security tool, I'll have to leverage something like this, especially once everything is out and already running in my environment. So the way in order to accomplish this is we will go into Systems Manager, we will have to create an IAM policy for that systems, or for those EC2 instances to leverage Systems Manager. So I'll go in, create an IAM policy, right? I'll take from our AWS managed policy, which is the SSM managed instance core policy. I'll attach that policy to an IAM role that I've created. I'll go ahead and grab this here. And this IAM role is what gives our EC2s the ability to accept packages deployed with Systems Manager Distributor. So one thing I do need to note is that all of our EC2 instances that we are leveraging do need to have that Systems Manager agent on there. The easiest way to do that is we will go back over to Systems Manager and have that deployed via Quick Start. So we go to Quick Setup, get started with Systems Manager. We will select all of those instances in our fleet that we want to constantly, run updates on, run new deployments on, and then those will be visible for us when time comes around. We've created and assigned that policy that we just talked about to our EC2 instances. We will go and create parameters in the Instance Manager, Systems Manager parameter store. And this will have the activation URL for that workload security agent, the manager URL that allows it to reach back out to this dashboard here, and some tenant ID and tokens that are specific to that specific to our account that are also found in that deployment script down at the bottom. Once those are up and running, then we can create an association in Systems Manager by going to Distributor. And we want to do a third-party association. And what's pretty cool is because of AWS's partnership with Trend Micro, when we go to third-party, this is probably one of the first things that you will see. So we'll select third-party, go to Trend Micro Cloud One, Workload Security, and we have a couple options, right? If I want to push all of this stuff out at one time, I can do that. If I want to install on the schedule to make sure that, no matter how frequently I am increasing my EC2 fleet, I can, maybe on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, update all of those instances with an agent and make sure it's there. So we'll just select install on a schedule and talk about the process. I'll add a name for this association. In this sense, we can just do EC2, SSM, Cloud One Workload Security Association, in place update, and all of this should be in place. And when you have your instances managed with that SSM agent or the Systems Manager agent, all we have to do is select choose instances manually. We have visibility of these. So I'll select specify schedule. And since I'm going to do this only once, I'll hit no schedule. Added medium compliance severity. Take control of 1 to 1. And output options. If I want to see what exactly is going on the back end and have all of the outputs sent to me, I'll take the name of an S3 bucket, mine is Trend Cloud Native, create association, and then this would be up and running in just a moment. And in just a few moments, we will have all of these instances in the in the Cloud One console managed by Cloud One Workload Security, and then we can apply that policy that we want to apply there. So that's the workflow there. It's a lot of different steps, but it's quick and easy when you think about it in comparison to adding a server one by one. But I just wanted to kind of stop and take a second to see if there were any questions from the audience. Yvonne, if you maybe had any questions from your side, if there's any way that we can address any last minute cues from y'all.
Yeah, so I know we're getting close to the 30-minute mark, so we do have a question that we can address from the audience before we sign off. And they were asking, is the process the same for deploying to Windows instances?
Okay, that's a great question. So I think whoever asked that definitely noticed that, whenever we went to deployment scripts and hit Linux agent deployment. This conversation was kind of specific to Linux, and in AWS, I typically only run Linux, right? But yes, the process is the exact same. All we have to do in that case is, make sure that whenever the deployment is live and those workload security agents are on the machines, we will go into our policies and assign these policies. We can either create one that's homespun based off of the Windows policy and have those rules that we want in place, assign it to the machine, or we can even have a event-based task set up so that anytime a Windows machine or even a Linux machine for that matter is added via Systems Manager, we can identify that the machine was added and then add an agent, and then add a policy automatically. So hope that answers the question.
Awesome. Thank you for breaking that down. Well, we are at the top of the 30 minutes. So wanted to thank all of you for joining us on our first hybrid cloud demo. We hope that this was valuable to you, and also invite you to join us for next month's demo on scaling your AWS best practice assessment with Trend Micro Cloud One conformity. So thank you all for being here today, and hope to see you next month.